This is U.S. History Regents Review, Unit 1, Part 3. We just finished talking about the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists are trying to argue in favor of the United States Constitution because it creates a powerful federal government. People like Hamilton, Madison, John Jay all supported it and wrote papers called the Federalist Papers to convince the public they should support this Constitution. However, the Anti-Federalists are opposed to it. They are afraid of the way that this government is going to threaten the rights of the people and take away the sovereignty of the states. They are concerned that it needs a Bill of Rights to actually guarantee what rights the people have. The Federalists think that's totally unnecessary. But let's have document time and look at one of these Federalist Papers out of the 85 essays called Federalist No. 10. This is written by James Madison. Among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction. By faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. Whoa. Basically, Madison is saying, hey, whenever there's a government created with a lot of diverse people in it, they're all going to have really different interests and desires. And they're going to form factions, the name that a lot of the founding fathers gave for political parties. But they saw political parties as being a bad thing, like little groups of people who want something that's in their own interest and to the disinterest of everybody else. So he thinks that's a problem. That's bad. And he says, it may be concluded that a pure democracy, by which I mean a society consisting of a small number of citizens who assemble and administer the government in person, can admit of no cure for the mischiefs of faction, or a republic, by which I mean a government in which the scheme of representation takes place, opens a different prospect and promises the cure for which we are seeking. So, as we are understanding the government that is being set up here, James Madison is saying that we should not have a pure democracy. This will lead to the problem of faction. Instead, we should have a republic where there is representation. That is the cure. So I bring this up because we need to remember that while our Constitution is creating a type of democracy, it's a representative democracy, meaning that the power of the people is somewhat limited. They vote for representatives, but then those representatives are supposed to be smarter, better people to make the choices. So the founders are actually afraid of the common people. They want representation, not pure democracy. So this is just one of the many Federalist Papers. You might see a quote from it on the exam. Remember that these are all written by people who support the Constitution and want to explain it to the people and why it's good. Now, how do the Federalists and Anti-Federalists come up with some sort of compromise? What do they decide to do? Well, they decide to agree to a Bill of Rights. So the Federalists say, yeah, sure, add one. And after the Constitution is ratified by the states, they get back together and they write down the rights guaranteed to American citizens. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the first 10 changes. These are rights guaranteed that the federal government cannot take away from people. But as we're going to see throughout the course, how to apply these rights, who gets to really enjoy these rights, what the limits are, those things are really going to be debated throughout the rest of US history. And feel free to skim through, just in short, some of these articles, some of these individual rights amendments. The most significant one for our purposes is Article 1. This is freedom of expression. Amendment 1 includes freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of petition, freedom of assembly, separation of church and state. These are really important. But the other ones also have to do with our rights as citizens when we've been accused of a crime. So again, this is meant to protect you from abuses of the federal government. So let's actually dig in to the US Constitution. Remember, it's ratified by the Constitutional Convention in 1789, and it is what we still have today. That's incredible. It's the oldest constitution in the world. It has 7 articles and 27 amendments, 27 changes, additions. And it sets up the relationship between the federal government and the states and creates the 3 branches of government. This is considered to be a living document. It means it can be reinterpreted as times change and it can be amended. And the 3 branches we'll look at are the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Document time again. The Preamble. This is the intro to the US Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. This is the purpose statement of the Constitution. Certain words are capitalized on purpose. We want to create a union of states. We want justice in our country, tranquility, meaning peace. We want safety and protection. And we want to promote the general welfare and enjoy liberty in this country to ourselves and our posterity, meaning for all future generations after us. This Constitution is meant to do that for all. So first up, the legislative branch. This is the first article of the Constitution because it's the most important to the Founding Fathers. They wanted it to be the most important. This branch is responsible for making laws. As I mentioned in a previous video, it's a Congress, the legislature. It is a bicameral legislature, meaning 2 houses. We have the House of Representatives, which is based on the population of each state, and the Senate. And there are 2 senators per state that work together. Today, there's 100 senators, 435 House members. The House is most directly supposed to represent the people. So when you want a law to be changed, there's something that you care about, you're supposed to call up your congressman or your congresswoman. They represent your wants and needs. They respond to you directly. And think about it, there's 435 of them. They are most prepared to actually represent you from your district, your area of this country in our federal government. And we know how many representatives are from each state and how they get split up and divvied up based on the census. There's a population count that's taken every 10 years. And so those representatives can move around. So if a bunch of people have moved to another state, that state will have more representatives in the next meeting of Congress. Congress is given certain powers, such as the power to declare war. It also has the power of the purse, meaning that it controls the money, has a big say in our taxes. So those are just a few of the things that are really important that the legislative branch does. The second article creates the executive branch. This branch is responsible for enforcing or carrying out the law. Mainly, we mean the president, but it also includes the vice president and the cabinet. The cabinet are the president's advisors. They head up some of the executive departments. They include the Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General, and other important positions. The president has a lot of important roles. He's the commander in chief of the military. He's the official head of state. He represents our country to other countries. And he has certain powers, like the power to veto or approve a law. He can appoint Supreme Court justices. He signs executive orders. He has a lot of those powers to himself. And how we pick our president and vice president is through the Electoral College. This is the selection. It is not a popular vote.